Number 15. His 21 faces watched the world burn. A man claimed he laced children's candy with poison, and millions believed him. Itogawa Ranpo is a famed Japanese novelist best known for his mystery novels. His stories were centered around fictional detective Kogoro Akechi, a Sherlock Holmes-like character from whom Ranpo took inspiration. During the course of the novels, he frequently clashes with an antagonist known as the Fiend with 20 faces. Little did anyone know the villain would provide inspiration for one of Japan's most notorious series of events. Glico is a Japanese company best known for their wildly popular Pocky candies. These treats have been distributed worldwide as a delicious snack. On March 18, 1984, the Glico company would make headlines for a completely different reason. Two men dressed in masks broke into the home of the company president. Ashohi saw Ezeki, tying him and his family up, then throwing Ezeki into the trunk of a car. Soon after, the perpetrators demanded a ransom of 1 billion yen, roughly $9 million in today's currency, and 220 pounds of gold bullion. Luckily, before any such demands could be met, Ezeki was able to escape his confinement. Unfortunately, this was not the end of the story. Days after Ezeki escaped, 6 cars parked at the Glico factory caught fire and were destroyed, with police determining it to be an act of arson. Then came the letters, sent to the police and local newspapers for publication. In them, the perpetrators insulted the police and left clues to identify them, such as the color of their car. They then threatened to kidnap the head of the prefectural police. Signed at the bottom of the letter was the monster with 21 faces. This caused concern among the Japanese populace, and soon the terror would be made real. A second letter soon arrived, claiming the monster had laced Glico candies with cyanide. Out of concern for public safety, all Glico candies were recalled from the shelves. As a result, Glico lost $130 million in revenue. Even stranger, none of the candies tested positive for poison. More letters soon arrived to various institutions, with claims the monster with 21 faces was a gang which included children. It also stated they had grown bored with targeting Glico, and it was initially believed their reign of fear was over. These hopes were quickly dashed when another company, Morinaga, received their own letter demanding money or face the consequences. Morinaga ignored the demand, which proved to be a major mistake. Within days, the monster claimed it had, quote, added a special flavor, end quote. While believing it to be another false claim, police still investigated the threat, and sure enough, they found boxes of Morinaga candies with a note labeled "Danger contains poison," again signed by the monster. Sure enough, large traces of poisons were found in the package's contents. A major investigation was established to find the monster with 21 faces. Ezeki, despite having spent 3 days with the individuals, was unable to provide any details regarding their identities, as they had been careful to conceal their faces and voices. Then came a break police were looking for. Security footage from a local store filmed an unknown man dressed in a suit and tie browsing through the shelves. Suddenly, he took several Glico candies from his pocket and placed them on display before casually leaving. Based on the footage, police released a composite sketch of who the individual might look like, as much of his face was obscured due to where he was facing. Known as the videotaped man, it is widely speculated this individual is the mastermind behind the monster with 21 faces. However, no one ever came forward with information, and the case soon turned cold. As a result of the mounting stress and scrutiny over failure to identify any suspects, Shiga Police Chief Shoji Yamamoto took his own life a year later. Following this, the monster with 21 faces appeared to have a change of heart. In a final letter, he stated the group, quote, decided to forget about torturing food-making companies, ending by saying any further attempts of blackmail would be a copycat. They also offered their condolences for the fallen police chief. Sure enough, the threatening letters ceased altogether. Police investigated over 120,000 suspects, looked into possible organized crime connections, and even the possibility of North Korean infiltrators. As of 2026, the monster with 21 faces has never been identified, despite around 1 million officers working on the case over the nearly 20 years of investigation, with the limitation for the poisonings running out 5 years later. This means even if someone was publicly identified, no charges could be brought against them. In 1995, the statute of limitations expired regarding Ezeki's kidnapping. Aside from the mystery surrounding the identity, the even bigger question was what was the motive behind their actions? Several theories have been floated around, including the actions of disgruntled former employees to anarchists and even Yakuza involvement, but this mystery has never been solved. If that story unsettled you, stay with me, we're not finished yet. Number 14. The frenzy-sweeping Overtoun Bridge. Imagine walking your dog on a peaceful bridge and then they suddenly jump over the edge. That's what's happened to more than 600 dogs on a bridge in Scotland. The Overtoun House is a 19th century estate, originally built as a retreat for an industrial entrepreneur, and is now a recognized historical site. Today, it has become a popular visit, especially for local dog owners. Leading to the estate is a bridge spanning over a nearby gorge. Completed in 1895, the bridge continues to grant passage for people exploring the estate's surroundings. But during the 1950s, a series of unexplained events started afflicting dogs who crossed the bridge. According to reports, canines began to act distressed or anxious. Then, without warning, the dogs will leap over the wall and plummet into the ravine below. With a 15-meter/49-foot drop to the bottom, this leaves the dogs seriously injured, or worse. There has been an estimated 600 recorded instances of dogs jumping off the bridge, with around 50 not surviving the fall. According to studies, all the dogs who have jumped are long-nosed breeds, big and small. Furthermore, a majority are said to have jumped from the same particular spot, over the right side ramparts, and despite many studies conducted at the site, nobody has been able to find a conclusive reason for the sudden erratic behavior. A common theory for some time was something was catching the dog's eyes, which sent them leaping towards it. However, this was proven false as the height of the ramparts are too tall for most dogs to see over the edge. Another idea was that they were reacting to sounds emitted from nearby Fastlane Bay, where the British Navy houses its Trident submarines. It was theorized the submarines were producing sounds unheard by human ears, but were clear and loud for that of a dog. This too was disproven through the use of high-end sound equipment, which were unable to pick up any such frequencies. As a result of the abnormal phenomenon, dog owners have begun to stay clear of the bridge, with those who still take their pups keeping them on a leash for safety. The circumstances surrounding Overtoun Bridge have made international headlines, being covered by Vice and even the New York Times. What is common between the articles is the complete lack of explanation for the events. The Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty of Animals decided to launch their own investigation in 2005. While it has been ruled out the dogs were deliberately thrown from the bridge, they still knew it was necessary to track down the source of the behavior. Dr. Sands, who made a documentary regarding the phenomenon, expressed his discomfort at the location. He said, "All your senses are on fire. It's got a strange feeling." Dr. Sands isn't the only one who has expressed a feeling of unease at the bridge. Many have reported general anxiety and discomfort while walking on Overtoun. Unsurprisingly, the house itself is reported to be haunted and has been considered a cause for the dogs jumping. Witnesses have reported seeing a woman dressed in white standing on the bridge, who disappears as they approach. The bridge gained further notoriety in 1994 due to an incident involving a disturbed individual throwing his baby over the bridge. The feelings expressed by visitors could certainly relate to the knowledge of Overtoun's reputation, resulting in disquiet emotions, but even those who are unaware of the reputation have reported the same sensations. In 2010, Dr. Sands returned to Overtoun for another study and concluded the dogs were not intentionally leaping down with the intention of harm. He believes there is a logical cause for the behavior, and has speculated it is related to the wild minks residing in the area. The theory goes that the dogs are becoming overwhelmed by the scent of minks located underneath the bridge, and thus in their confusion and due to instinct, they jump in order to chase the scent. This would explain why the bridge tends to affect mostly long-nosed breeds. While dogs have a strong sense of smell already, those who are long-nosed have a more amplified scent-detecting ability. Unfortunately, this remains simply a theory, and the true cause of the jumpings is unknown. If the cause is the scent of mink, why haven't similar occurrences been reported elsewhere? Minks are rather common across Scotland, so it should be happening across the country rather than being concentrated in a single spot. As of recording this episode, the mystery lives on, with each study proving inconclusive. The people of Dumbarton are left to only speculate why their beloved pets are driven to make such a drastic leap into the abyss. Dog walkers still frequent the location, but many have opted to avoid the bridge altogether. This mystery will be hard to forget, but the cases ahead move from the unknown to something far more deliberate. Number 13. The months of madness along the Rat River. In -40-degree temperatures, one man held off an entire police force and vanished into the Arctic, sparking the largest manhunt in Canadian history. It was a chilly July day in 1931, and RCMP Constable Edgar Millen was on patrol in Fort McPherson, Northwest Territories. During his rounds, he came across a stranger he had never seen before. The area was a popular spot for fur trappers and those hoping to cash in on the potential gold still sealed in the rivers. Edgar engaged in conversation with the man, inquiring about his identity and intentions. The man introduced himself as Albert Johnson, but kept his motives to himself. He maintained a standoffish demeanor and spoke in short sentences. It became evident to Edgar this man was not looking to make friends. In fact, he appeared to want nothing to do with others whatsoever. After this interaction, the man purchased a canoe from locals and set out along the Mackenzie River Delta. Edgar's conversation would be the only known time someone had spoken to him. Aside from the unfriendly attitude, Edgar noticed he had plenty of cash to buy supplies essential to living in the northern wilderness. However, he lacked a trapping license, an odd occurrence as trapping is the primary source of food during the harsh winters. Months went by without any word or sightings of the man, with the initial meeting pushed to the back of Edgar's mind. Then, that December, local Indigenous community members started making complaints to police that their traps were found tampered with. The owners had come to check if there were any catches, but found the traps tripped and hanged from the trees. They gave the description of a man who was known to live in the area, and Edgar recognized these as matching the mysterious man. In one case, someone reported an encounter in the woods with a man who shouted to keep away while threatening them with a rifle, and it was the same mysterious individual. RCMP Constable Alfred King and Special Constable Joe Bernard decided to make the trek to the mystery man's cabin, approximately 100 kilometers from the detachment. When they arrived, they noted smoke was rising from the chimney, indicating he was there. They knocked on the door and attempted to speak with him, but he made no response. Alfred peered through one of the cabin windows, but the man inside placed a cloth sack over it, obstructing the view. After some time, without success, the officers decided to return to the detachment and obtain a search warrant. 5 days later, Alfred, Joe, and 2 other officers returned to the cabin. Alfred knocked on the door and called out to the man. Once again, there was no reply. Alfred made several more attempts to speak with him through the door, but he remained silent. At this time, Alfred decided they should enforce the search warrant and started kicking the door. Immediately, a gunshot echoed from within the cabin, and Alfred collapsed into the snow. Officers opened fire on the cabin, while one grabbed Alfred and dragged him back to the sled. Knowing they were unfit to impose a siege, and with Alfred gravely wounded, the officers made the trek back to the detachment for reinforcements. Alfred was taken back to Aklavik, where he was able to make a recovery. Meanwhile, RCMP recruited a posse of 9 men, along with 42 sled dogs, rifles, ammunition, and even 20 pounds worth of dynamite. When the posse arrived at the cabin, they set up a perimeter, then began thawing the dynamite in their coats. Shots were soon exchanged, and a full-on firefight began. Officers noted the man was aiming his rifle through several holes around the cabin. He appeared to be heavily armed and a good shooter, nearly hitting several officers during the 15-hour standoff. Running out of options, and with the weather beginning to worsen, officers decided to use the remaining dynamite to blow up the cabin. The charge was lit. A man made a run towards the cabin, and then threw the bundle as hard as he could. The blast rippled through the walls and collapsed the roof. Then there was silence. The gunfire stopped, but officers were still in cover. Eventually, they decided to make a rush at the cabin. As soon as the officers stood up, they once again came under fire. Feeling defeated and with no other ideas, the posse returned to their sleds and made the journey back to Aklavik. As they left, they heard an eerie sound coming from the ruins. Inside, the man was laughing loudly, somehow still alive despite the devastation to his home. As the posse arrived back at the detachment and told about what happened, news was spread nationally via the radio, and a full-scale manhunt was dispatched to apprehend the man. Unfortunately for authorities, the search was delayed due to blizzard conditions and frigid temperatures reaching -40 degrees. By the time they set out and returned to the cabin, the mystery man was long gone. While investigating the remains of the cabin, officers discovered the man had essentially made a trench in the interior, providing excellent cover during the shootouts. Now officers were faced with the dilemma of finding a needle in a haystack. The search party enlisted the help of local indigenous men who were experts at tracking and had better knowledge of the area to help in the search. Eventually, a group led by Edgar was able to catch up with the man. Instead of surrendering, he once again responded with gunfire. During the exchange, Edgar was struck through the heart and collapsed to the ground. This once again forced the RCMP to retreat. Edgar, the only individual known to have spoken with the man, was now the man's first fatal victim. Through studying the route the man was taking, it was determined he was making a break for the Yukon through the Richardson Mountains. RCMP officers were dispatched to block off the two passes through the mountains, hoping to stop him once and for all. To their shock, the man instead scaled the peaks and disappeared into the Yukon. He was quickly making a legend for himself, and his ability to seemingly slip through lines unnoticed baffled investigators. Running out of options, the RCMP hired Wilfred Wap May, a pilot for Canadian Airways. He was a veteran of the First World War, having obtained the status of ace during his tenure. Wap used a monoplane with snow skis attached to the bottom, meaning he could easily land in the snow, even in isolated areas. Enlisting Wap's aid proved to be a major turning point in the search. During a flyover on February 14, 1932, Wap spotted footprints along the ice of the Eagle River. He discovered these tracks were a series of caribou tracks, but something about them seemed off. Upon closer inspection, he was surprised to see human footprints on top of the already made hoof prints. The man had been following caribou packs as a means to conceal his movements. Wap made this determination after spotting human footprints leading away from the river in areas where the man was making camp. Wap radioed his discovery to the RCMP, and a group was immediately dispatched to intercept the man. As the posse rounded a turn in the river, they spotted him walking only a few hundred yards in front of them. Not taking any chances, the team opened fire, forcing him to try and run for cover. A bullet passed through him and he fell into the snow. Despite his injury, he remained defiant and once again engaged RCMP in a shootout. Alfred, who was part of the posse, was once again struck by the man's gunfire and wounded, but would survive the ordeal. Eventually, another bullet hit the man in the lower body and he stopped firing. The posse slowly approached him, ready to strike in case this was another trick. One officer turned him onto his back, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The mad trapper's rampage was finally done. Officers brought the man's body back to a nearby settlement and hoisted it up to do an examination. As he fell for the last time, the cold temperatures quickly froze the man's body. In what was probably his last expression, he now had a permanent, grimaced look on his face, which some have stated appeared to be him smirking in amusement or an expression of pain. He had over $2,000 in both Canadian and American currency, some small animal corpses, pills, and a jar of teeth with gold fillings. After the investigation, he was buried in a grave back in Aklavik. While his reign of terror was over and the case closed, one key aspect continues to elude historians. The man's life prior to arriving in the Northwest Territories is undocumented, leaving his place of birth, occupation, and even his age as unknown. When Edgar spoke with the man originally, he stated he had what he believed to be a Scandinavian accent, his motives for relocating to the far north, and even whether or not he was actually the one tampering with the traps is still unclear. There have been several investigations into determining his true identity, What is universally agreed upon is the name Albert Johnson was a pseudonym in order to conceal who he really was. There have been several theories as to who the Mad Trapper was before his time in the North. Some have even speculated he was a former Depression-era outlaw, akin to the likes of Bonnie and Clyde or John Dillinger. In 2007, a team of forensics experts and historians unearthed the grave and conducted a thorough examination of his body. They also compared DNA samples with those of claimed family members. None of those who participated were found to be related to the Mad Trapper. His trek across the frozen vasts of northern Canada remains the largest manhunt in Canadian history. A further analysis of his DNA linked his ancestry to Sweden, but as of 2026, his true identity remains a complete mystery. Number 12. Vanished into the Great Smoke. Here, it's easy to be surrounded by people and still disappear completely. Since 1934, 5 people have disappeared in Great Smoky, never to be found. The most discussed case is that of Dennis Lloyd Martin, a 6-year-old who was on a trip with his family for Father's Day in 1969. Dennis was with his father, grandfather, and older brother at Spence Field, through which the famous Appalachian Trail passes. As the 2 adults rested in the field, Dennis, his brother, and 2 other boys they met at the park were playing hide and seek in the nearby woods. One of the boys decided it would be fun if they split up to surprise the adults. Dennis was last seen heading northwest, disappearing from view behind a bush. When the 2 other boys jumped out at the adults, Martin was not with them. His father began searching and calling for him, even taking a short walk along the Appalachian Trail. 4 hours went by, but there was no sign of Dennis. The Rangers and the family searched nearly all night, and the next morning a full-scale search was activated. A combined group of rangers, family, nearby campers, and other volunteers scoured the area in hopes of finding Dennis. They were soon joined by 2 helicopters from a nearby Air Force base. Dogs were unable to pick up Dennis's scent as the result of earlier rain, and thus the trail went cold. Over 2,000 people were involved in a 2-week search for Dennis, and the boy was never found. No sign of Dennis was ever uncovered, nor was there any evidence he had been kidnapped. The search lasted until September, becoming the largest search and rescue operation in the park's history. Dennis remains missing to this day, over 50 years later. Number 11. Beneath the depths of the deep blue sea, a woman vanished from a boat in the middle of the night, leaving no evidence. Sarm Heslop, a British woman from Southampton, was enjoying life with her partner Ryan Bain of Michigan. The 2 shared a love for the sea, which they traveled together on Bain's catamaran, named the Siren Song. During the last weeks of winter 2021, the couple were spending time on the US Virgin Islands, an overseas territory in the Caribbean. Sarm and Bain met via the Tinder dating app the year prior and appeared to hit it off from the start. Sarm was previously a flight attendant before leaving to assist Bain with his luxury yacht company. On March 7, 2021, Ryan and Sarm moored in Cruz Bay, then headed to shore for some recreation around the town. Witnesses stated the couple appeared calm, nothing to suspect any kind of tension or even the slightest thing wrong. After having dinner and drinks at a harbor restaurant, the couple returned to their boat around 8:45 p.m. A curfew was still active on the island because of health and safety restrictions at the time. According to Bain, he and Sarm were in bed and asleep by 11 p.m., but when Bain awoke 3 hours later, Sarm was nowhere to be found. He searched the boat, but she wasn't on board. Deeply concerned, Bain took the dinghy back to the island and reported her missing to the police. However, the police advised Bain to contact the Coast Guard, and he returned to the boat, but reports have said the Coast Guard was not contacted until around 11 a.m., a gap of 9 hours. A search of the surrounding waters and coastline, using drones, people on the ground, and boats, found no trace of Sarm. When authorities notified Sarm's family of her disappearance, her family began publicly questioning what had happened in the hours that followed. According to others moored nearby, they were not alerted to an emergency during the hours before the Coast Guard was contacted. Another witness, who was walking his dog that night, thought he heard a scream coming from the direction of the ocean, around the time frame of when Sarm vanished. Though this was never confirmed or linked to the case, family and friends described her as a strong swimmer and conscious of safety. The idea that she would suddenly decide to take a late-night swim was out of character. Bain initially invited police to search his boat, but this was later rescinded on the advice of his lawyer. Local police later issued civil citations, but no criminal charges were filed and no warrant search was carried out. As of recording this episode, it has not been publicly confirmed that Bain has been formally questioned by detectives, nor has a forensics team done a sweep of the boat. In late 2021, the yacht was listed for sale, and reporting noted its name had been removed. Sarm's family have petitioned to have the boat seized and searched, but no further details are available if this will move forward. The BBC produced a documentary surrounding the case, in which new details have emerged. In the program, CCTV footage is shown of Bain and Sarm walking together at 8:43 back to their dinghy. This footage was originally shown to Sarm's family 3 years prior, which shows some inconsistencies with previous testimony. The dress Sarm was reportedly wearing on the night was not the clothing she was wearing in the footage. It was originally stated she was wearing a black dress with flowers decorated on it, but the footage shows her wearing a skirt and a top. The black dress is one of her belongings that was never returned to her family, leading them to believe this is what she was wearing when she disappeared. One key detail was noticed by BBC journalist Tier Dondi during her coverage of the story. Dondi spent some time in the Virgin Islands researching Sarm's disappearance, and she was given access to CCTV footage by the police. Dondi said the timestamp doesn't match Bain's version of events. He stated they reached the boat at 10 p.m., but the time on the CCTV was recorded at 8:45 p.m. Dondi had taken a dinghy to the spot where Bain's boat was anchored and timed it at 10 minutes travel. This means Bain and Sarm would have arrived at approximately 9 p.m. This leaves an entire hour unaccounted for. Police have said they wanted to speak with him further, but on legal advice he declined. 4 years after Sarm's disappearance, Bain released a 5-page statement proclaiming his innocence. In it, he described the relationship as full of love and care, and he had been painted with a, quote, false sense of suspicion, defended his actions to, quote, safeguard my rights when he attained a lawyer, and refused police access to the boat, and added, my decision was framed as suspicious rather than prudent. Bain has not been charged with any crime and denies involvement, but the unanswered questions have continued to trouble Sarm's family and investigators. What happened after Sarm returned to the boat that night has never been established, and no evidence has publicly confirmed how or why she disappeared. Number 10. Courtney Lake. An ex-boyfriend broke a no-contact order 33 times in one day. Weeks later, she was never seen again. Courtney Lake was a young woman from St. Lawrence, on the southern tip of the Burin Peninsula. She was described as independent and close with her family. During her late teens, she fell in love with a man named Jason, and the two had a son together. While the relationship didn't work out, the pair continued to co-parent their child while maintaining a cordial friendship with one another. In 2013, she became the first single mother to be accepted into the Miss Newfoundland and Labrador pageant. It seemed like her life was finally turning around, but everything fell apart when she met Philip Smith. This new relationship is described as toxic and abusive, with Philip constantly manipulating and even physically assaulting her. The last straw came on April 17, 2017. Police received a call from Courtney's mother, Lisa, after Courtney was injured at Philip's hands. According to the report, Courtney and Philip were in a pickup truck when a verbal argument broke out, and Courtney attempted to exit the vehicle. Philip grabbed her and punched her twice, striking her stomach and arm. As a result of this latest incident, Courtney ended the relationship, but Philip refused to let go. On several occasions, he sent explicit photos to her through text, which she reported to the authorities. On May 5th, Lisa was contacted by Philip via telephone, stating he intended to end his life. Lisa phoned Philip's sister, who in turn phoned police, stating she was deeply concerned for his well-being. Using a phone signal, a Royal Newfoundland Constabulary officer located the man near the St. John's Airport, but Philip fled before any contact could be made. A search managed to locate him later the same day, and Philip was taken to a healthcare facility where he remained for 4 days. At this point, Courtney obtained what is known as a police bond, which legally prevented Philip from making any form of contact with her. This did not deter him though, and at one point he attempted to speak with her 33 times in one day. 2 days later, on June 7th, Philip pleaded guilty to several charges, including the distribution of illicit images without the consent of the person depicted. Instead of jail time, he was given probation, with an even stricter no-contact order than previously implemented. His defense attorney successfully argued to have a number of charges dropped on the basis Philip was undergoing a crisis. While the trial was underway, Courtney continued on with her life. She met with Jason for their son's weekly swimming lesson. She then spent some time with her family before returning to her home in Mount Pearl. This was the last time she was ever seen. After not hearing from Courtney, Lisa called police to report her missing. Initially, police spoke with Jason, but he was quickly cleared of any wrongdoing. Then, focus shifted to Philip. Finding no witnesses amongst Philip's neighbors, investigators began checking CCTV footage of Philip's home, as well as Courtney's. A break came into the case when a nearby resident presented dashcam footage showing Courtney entering a black pickup truck just before 8 a.m. on June 7th. The vehicle matched the one owned by Philip, and he was confirmed as the primary suspect. Police conducted a surveillance of his home and even gained a search warrant for his home and truck. Several items were removed for analysis, but it is unknown if they provided any evidence relating to Courtney's disappearance. Furthermore, Philip's truck came up clean, and it was returned to him shortly after. Philip confessed to investigators he had picked up Courtney that day and took her back to his home, but denied causing harm to her. According to him, something backed up by text messages, Philip agreed to pick up Courtney so she could retrieve her Christmas ornaments from Philip's home. This resulted in Philip once again being charged with breaking his conditions, for which he pleaded guilty and was given jail time. Courtney's family found the idea she would willingly go with him to be odd. Weeks before she disappeared, Courtney and Lisa went to Philip's home to retrieve belongings, only to find them burning on Philip's front lawn. It's likely Philip gave false promises this would be the last time he would see her, which was true, albeit with possibly a more twisted intention in mind. The focus around Philip, combined with his criminal behavior, eventually led to him being dismissed from the armed forces that autumn. This action would further spiral his behavior out of control. On Halloween, Philip's family notified authorities he had once again stated his intention to end his own life. When police arrived at his home, he was gone. At 3 a.m. the following morning, Philip's body was found near his family's cabin. With this, the biggest chance of finding Courtney was lost. While the circumstances surrounding Courtney's disappearance remain a mystery, many believed Philip was involved. Unfortunately, without knowing where she is, there would be no closure for those who love her. Jason continues to raise his son and maintains close contact with Courtney's family. Jason has also become the target of an unknown individual. In March 2022, police and fire responded to Jason's home after his 2 vehicles became engulfed in flames. Following an investigation, the fires were determined to be set deliberately by an unknown arsonist. Jason believes he was targeted by someone who suspects he was the true perpetrator of Courtney's disappearance. However, there is literally no evidence suggesting he had any part in the crime whatsoever, and Jason having confirmed alibis for his whereabouts at the time of Courtney's disappearance. As of 2026, the case remains under investigation by the RNC. If you or anyone you know has any information regarding her disappearance or any other missing persons in Newfoundland, you can contact the RNC directly at 1-709-729-8000 or by calling Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. Number 9. A lie which may have cost a life. At this park, people have gone missing in places that should have been easy to search, like they simply vanished. Grand Teton National Park is a 310,000-acre stretch of land in western Wyoming. Several missing person reports have been linked to Grand Teton. Fortunately, a majority are solved. But the case of Cayenne Malachlin continues to baffle investigators. A 27-year-old snowboard instructor originally from Ireland, Malachlin left for Grand Teton the morning of June 8, 2021. Friends told investigators he had texted them before leaving, excited to explore a trail from Garnet Canyon to Amphitheater Lake. Then he failed to report to work 2 days later. After another few days without contact, his employers filed a missing persons report. Investigators found security footage of Malachlin entering the park, but he never left. They later found his car parked at the Lupine Meadows trailhead. A check of his phone activity found a ping from a nearby cell tower the same day he disappeared, but nothing more after. An extensive search of the area failed to find any trace of the man, but soon police had what they thought was a good lead. A woman who lived nearby, named Heather, told police she had seen Malachlin the day he disappeared, hiking down a nearby trail in the direction of Taggart. Heather claimed the two spoke for a brief time before going their separate ways. She adds he was going to do some diving from the cliffs into the water. Based on this information, park authorities began a new search around Taggart and Bradley Lakes, but unfortunately, they found no sign of Malachlin's presence. Investigators dug deeper into Heather's story and eventually uncovered the truth. Heather had never seen or spoken to Malachlin. She later claimed she made up the story in order to keep the search going, but the damage done is undeniable. Over 500 hours of searching was wasted on the false lead, precious time that could have been instrumental in finding Malachlin's safe. Heather was fined and banned from the park for 5 years as a result. The surrounding terrain made searching difficult for authorities. The trailhead passes through steep climbs with jagged rocks, but Malachlin's mother described the trail itself as, quote, not difficult at all. Even the more than 50 aerial searches investigators conducted failed to find Malachlin. Despite the use of infrared cameras to find heat signatures through the trees, even to this day, not a single piece of Malachlin's personal belongings have been found. It's hard to imagine the heartbreak his family must feel to receive some hope of his whereabouts, thanks to some would-be well-doer, only to discover it was a lie. While Heather has attempted to explain herself, it's still hard to imagine why anyone would make this kind of false report, even with good intentions. As a result of her false testimony, any chance of finding Malachlin alive, or even at all, is likely gone.
Number 8.
The rocky maze of the Colorado River. One wrong decision here can put you somewhere no one will ever reach. Grand Canyon National Park is located in northern Arizona. The Grand Canyon has various dangers associated with it. Between 2018 and 2023, National Park Service received 1,100 missing persons reports. While most have been solved, either happily or not, there remains a series of persons who have never been found. The most famous of these is the disappearance of Glenn and Bessie Hyde. The couple married on April 10, 1928 in Los Angeles, but soon relocated to Green River, Utah. Glenn was an experienced river runner and wished to bring Bessie on a river trip so she might experience its joys. On October 20th, the couple set out on the Green River, rowing down the canyons and into the Colorado. The last time they were seen was on November 18th, when they met photographer Emery Kolb. They had their photograph taken, then recommenced their journey. They were never seen again. After they failed to appear at a rendezvous at Needles, California on December 6, Glenn's father set up a search to find the missing couple. The search party managed to find the couple's raft, still intact and with Bessie's diary within. Sadly, no further trace of the Hydes were ever found. To this day, the mystery is officially unsolved.
Number 7.
Lost in the Sierra Nevada. At this park, the views are endless, and so are the places where someone can fall and never be seen again. Located in central eastern California, Yosemite National Park covers 3,000 square kilometers of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The serene landscape comes with unexpected dangers. The most recent unsolved missing persons case from Yosemite was filed in July 2020. Sandra Lynn Johnson Hughes. She had recently moved from Hawaii to California in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and scheduled a camping trip in order to briefly escape the stresses of the times. Sandra was well experienced with the outdoors and was prepared for the trip ahead. She last spoke with family on June 26, where she let them know of her plans to head to Yosemite for a few days. On July 5th, park officials discovered her abandoned campsite. Nothing looked out of the ordinary. The camp was organized with no signs of struggle or other evidence of foul play. However, Sandra simply was not there. Furthermore, investigators found her car crashed near the campsite, but still no signs of her were located. Search and rescue efforts were halted in September after the creek fire engulfed the area, and a full search was called off soon after it was resumed. Since Sandra's disappearance, several hikers reported to park officials Encountering a woman out in the trails, she appeared bruised and was offered assistance, but she declined before parting. The description provided by these witnesses matched Sandra's, but unfortunately the Good Samaritans were unaware she was a missing person. Sandra's case leaves so many questions. What happened to her? Why did she decline assistance? What caused her to crash the car? Even more jarring, a family camping near Sandra's camp sometime after she vanished reported their son was speaking to an unseen person outside the tent. When they asked who he was speaking to, he said it was a woman, but nobody was there at the time. Some have speculated the boy may have encountered the ghost of Sandra. With her whereabouts unknown, it's hard to understand someone's motives in such a situation. She has been described in the media as a survivalist, so it could be possible Sandra's disappearance was her own intention. The stress of moving to a new place, the world being completely transformed, far from the comfort we were used to. Perhaps she decided living surrounded by these stresses and the vast number of people was not worth it, and instead attempted to live on her own in the wilderness. This could explain her behavior when encountering the hikers, and the reason her camp was undisturbed, but without Sandra, the real circumstances will never be known.
Number 6.
Lost in the Valley. People do not usually get lost in Death Valley. They run out of time. Death Valley National Park is a 3.4 million acre stretch of desert between Fresno, California and Las Vegas, Nevada. Death Valley certainly lives up to its name. It is a massive rock desert featuring some of the harshest conditions on Earth. A number of people have become lost in the desert, and many have never returned. On May 4th, 2021, 76-year-old Robert Bob Wildener left home to repair a truck located in Saline Valley, a spot known for its hot springs and nearby Joshua Tree forests. Wildener told his family he would be back in a day, but by May 8th, the family still had not heard from him. They filed a missing persons report, and an investigation was underway. Park rangers located Wildener's vehicle, along with the truck he had set out to repair, near Warm Springs Campground, but Wildener himself was nowhere to be found. His keys and cell phone were found abandoned in his vehicle. The camp host told authorities he hadn't seen Wildener. A large land and air search began the next day, but had to be called off after a few days due to the increasing temperatures. 2 years went by without any sign until a pair of hikers made a surprising discovery. In March 2023, Doug Carey and his colleague Stuart Jeffries went to the location Wildener's truck was found. Using a theory they had come up with, the two men made their way to a nearby camp bathroom, and from there walked in the direction they believed Wildener had traveled. Their theory was that Wildener had used the bathroom, then made a wrong turn when exiting. After they had walked a good distance over rocks and dirt, Jeffries came across a single sandal. They took it to the authorities, and a family member identified it as identical to one belonging to Wildener, down to the makeshift repair job he was said to have done to it. According to Carey and Jeffries' theory, they believed Wildener slipped on a rock, fell hard, and injured himself. In a later blog entry, Carey added they believed Wildener had been swallowed by the desert. Not far from where they found the sandal, they came across a cave that had partially collapsed due to heavy rains. Carey and Jeffries speculate that Wildener may have tried to take shelter there. As of recording this episode, Wildener remains listed as missing. Without the ability to thoroughly search the cave, the theory may never be proven.
Number 5.
Derek J. Luking. In 2012, 24-year-old Derek J. Luking failed to report in for work, causing concern among his co-workers. They contacted Luking's home, and his roommate revealed that Luking wasn't there either, and that he hadn't seen him for a while. When Luking's family arrived, they checked his computer and found search results for Great Smoky, along with a reservation for a hotel near the park. Investigators were able to obtain security footage of Luking at the hotel, and a search of his hotel room uncovered an open bottle of liquor. In hotel security footage, he was seen wearing a hiking backpack as he left, and that was the last time he was ever seen. The Luking family went to Great Smoky's Newfound Gap, and were elated to find his car in the parking lot. Inside was several pieces of newly purchased hiking and camping gear, including survival tools, an axe, compass, lamp, and more. However, Liu King was nowhere in sight. More chillingly, a note found in the car read, "Don't try to follow me." This piqued the concern of his family, and a search and rescue operation was initiated by police and park rangers. Despite covering a vast area and questioning hundreds of potential witnesses, nothing of Liu King's whereabouts were found, and nobody recalled seeing anyone matching his description. Many questions remain regarding his disappearance. Why buy all this gear, then leave it behind in the car? Why the sudden urge to go on this unannounced trip? And what about the note? Finding that note alarmed his family, and search teams began looking right away. No clear explanation was ever confirmed. However, his family and friends stated they saw no signs Liu King was experiencing any excessive stress or signs of depression. Later, searchers found human remains near where Liu King's car was located, but they turned out not to be his. Though investigators initially believed they had found Liu King, a thorough examination revealed the identity of the remains was actually Giovanni Cocchini, another hiker who went missing days after Liu King.
Number 4.
Teresa Gibson. In 1976, Teresa Gibson, a 16-year-old, was on a high school trip on the Andrews Bald Trail. She and a group of other students turned back and walked back to the parking area. When they arrived, they discovered that Gibson wasn't with them. She was last seen a half-mile from the parking lot, leaving hope she could be found quickly. Unfortunately, this was not the result, and Gibson is still listed as missing. The circumstances of her disappearance are unknown. How she was able to vanish within a group of people is a puzzle yet to be solved. Several leads, including the discovery of human remains nearby, have turned out to be unrelated.
Number 3.
Abandoned in Anvil Springs Canyon. In 1996, a family of 4 German tourists, Egbert Rimkus, his partner, Cornelia Meyer, along with Rimkus's son, Georg, and Cornelia's son Max, vanished in the park during a vacation to the area. They were scheduled to return home on July 27th, but never boarded their flight. On October 21st, a park ranger found the family's rental van abandoned in Anvil Springs Canyon, a remote part of Death Valley. 3 of the van's tires were flat and damaged from the rocky terrain. A search of the surrounding area failed to turn up any signs of the family, and it was called off after a week. This was the end of the story for 13 years, until a startling discovery was made by 2 off-duty search and rescue workers. Les Walker and Tom Mahood ventured into the area where the van was discovered to see if they could find anything. Around 7 kilometers south, the remains of 2 adults were found, and a DNA analysis confirmed the male to be Rimkus. Cornelia's passport was found on the grounds nearby. To this day, the children have not been found, and the case remains unsolved. Number 7.
Number 2.
Where the Alps meet the Southern Hemisphere. People have vanished in this park where help should have been close by, but there was nothing they could do. Alpine National Park is a 6,400 square kilometer area. It has become a top destination for those seeking a Swiss Alps-like experience in the Southern Hemisphere, but Alpine National Park has also had its fair share of vanishings. In July 2019, an abandoned BMW was found parked on the side of Mount Buller Road. Inside was a jacket, cell phone, and the car keys. Police soon discovered the car belonged to 72-year-old Conrad Whitlock, a Victoria resident. His wife revealed she had last seen him around 11:30 the night before when he climbed into bed with her. When she woke at 5:30 the next morning, he was already gone. His work revealed he never arrived that day. The last official sighting of Whitlock was by some motorists traveling on the same road, and they passed him at around 6 a.m. A rescue team searched the area for 6 days, but were unable to locate Whitlock. As July is winter in the Southern Hemisphere, nightly temperatures dropped below 0 Celsius. Prior to his disappearance, Whitlock was participating in a practice at a nearby racetrack when he crashed into a barrier. A colleague stated he saw a bruise on Whitlock's head, and his wife told investigators Whitlock had complained of headaches. To this day, no one has seen or heard from Whitlock. The reason for his sudden disappearance remains unexplained.
Number 1.
Where Old Faithful blows its top, in Yellowstone, the danger is not just where you can fall, it is where no one will ever find you. Located in the northwest corner of Wyoming, Yellowstone attracts millions of visitors to the US's least populated state per year. The most recent disappearance in Yellowstone is of Austin King, a 22-year-old man from Minnesota. King was familiar with Yellowstone, as he worked at a concession stand within the park itself. On September 14, 2024, King embarked on a solo hike to scale Eagle Peak. A park ranger encountered King on the trail and briefly spoke to him. King had initially planned a different hike for that day, but said he decided to trek up Eagle Peak instead. After parting ways, King continued up the steep trail. The excursion takes several days there and back, so when he didn't return home for some time, nobody was too alarmed initially. King had made contact with his friends and family during his hike, describing the harsh weather conditions of the fog, rain, and sleet as he ascended. But then on September 20th, he failed to appear at the boat scheduled to take people back to employee housing. A search began the following morning and went on for days before a team discovered an abandoned camp near Howell Creek. King himself, though, was nowhere to be found. Soon, the search expanded to include drones and helicopters, but there was still no sign of the missing man. Eventually, bad weather and the approaching winter forced the search to be called off. The only other evidence of King was discovered at the top of Eagle Peak. A handwritten note signed by King dated September 17th described the cold conditions that day on the mountain. Sleet and hail rained from the sky, and a thick fog engulfed the mountains. Despite the harshness, King described the experience as something he will never forget, closing the note saying, "Life is beautiful, go out and live it," followed by a smiley face drawing next to his name. Nearly a year passed before King's father and a group of volunteers resumed the search in August 2025. Sadly, they were unable to find King or any other trace of his location.